you say that you don't think President Trump has changed the entire Republican Party. What do you mean by that? Because a lot of people think he has, in fact.
Well, look, there's no question that President Trump has changed the agenda of the Republican Party in some respects, in terms of America's role as leader of the free world, policies of tariffs and taxes at the border. But I don't think he's changed the Republican Party. I mean, all throughout my life, I've heard people come up to me and express appreciation for our strong stand on limited government, fiscal responsibility, the right to life, strong military. And after leaving the White House, none of that's ever changed. Even in my short presidential campaign, people would come up to me more often than not and say, agree with everything you said. And I'd say, can I count on your vote? And they'd say, no, I got to be with Trump this time. So I get it. I understand the president's appeal. But I think at the end of the day, this is still a mainstream conservative party, and it gives me great confidence about the future.
There's also, though, an element of populism to President Trump's governing strategy. Do you see that, and do you think it is shifting key parts of the party, for example, in terms of how he deals with foreign policy and traditional United States allies?
I do believe at the highest levels what you're seeing in the party today is a debate over whether we're going to stay on track to that Reagan conservative agenda that really defined the Trump-Pence years. I mean, we cut taxes, we rebuilt our military, we appointed conservatives to our courts at every level. We stood with our allies, stood up to our enemies. But today in the Republican Party, that traditional Republican conservative agenda is being challenged by a populism unmoored to conservative principles. A populism that questions whether America needs to continue to meet our obligations around the world. A populism that argues for raising taxes on working families and raising border taxes. And frankly, a populism that wants to marginalize issues like the right to life, no longer talk about them. But Kristen, I really believe with all my heart that the vast majority of people that ever vote Republican still hew to those common sense conservative principles, and the calling of my life right now is just to continue to give voice to that, encourage men and women around the country to take those stands, and I really do believe conservatism will carry the day in the Republican Party in the years ahead.
You, of course, recently saw President Trump at the funeral for former President Jimmy Carter. Do you ever talk to him? Does he ever reach out to you for any counsel at this point, or?
You know, there were difficult days at the end of the administration. But what's not widely known is that the president and I parted very amicably. That he thanked me from the tarmac of Andrews Air Force Base and my family by name for the service we'd rendered to the country and to him. And we'd speak several times a month in the days after we left office. The day I went to the inauguration, the president called me. We talked for an hour about conversations I'd had with people on the platform. But what saddened me was several months after we left office, he returned to much of the same rhetoric that he had used in the run-up to that fateful day of January 6th. Again, talking again about the election being stolen, suggesting that I could have had the ability to overturn the election. And that was where I just came to the conclusion that we best part ways. Now, I did see him at the Carter funeral, and we had a warm exchange. I stood up, I shook his hand, and I said, congratulations, Mr. President. And I could tell he softened and said, thanks, Mike. And I congratulated the First Lady as well. It was a good moment, and I pray for the president often, and I want him to be successful. But I really do believe in my heart the policies, as well as his great political skills, accounted for our success in those first years. And so I think the best way that I can help him, help the party, and help the country is by being a voice for those policies that made our administration successful, America secure and prosperous, and will again.
When I think about your time after you left office, you obviously ran for the presidency. What did you learn about this country, sir, that you might not have known before you ran for office yourself?
I just learned even more that the American people are the most resilient, the most generous, the most faithful, the most patriotic, caring people the world has ever known. I mean, my hope for the future of this country is based on my belief in God, who I believe has ever had his hand on this great experiment in freedom. And it's based on my confidence in the American people. I mean, so many people from every political background over the last 4 years have made a point to come up to me and express appreciation for the stand that I took on that fateful day in January of 2021. And they often begin by saying, I don't agree with anything else you stand for, but I wanted you to know. And there's been a graciousness. There's been people who come up to me and said, I totally support President Trump, but I know you did what you had to do, and I'm grateful. And when I see that character of the American people, it fills me with confidence that the best days for this country are yet to come.
Vice President Mike Pence, thank you for your time today, sir. I really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Good to have you in Indiana.
Such an honor to be here. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.